Allie.
I'm Renee.
I'm Christina.
I'm Alicia.
And I'm Jen.
And we are
Melanated View.
This is where the thoughts, the opinions, and the experiences of 5 Black Canadians are shared with you in mind. The goal? To open up the discussion with regards to challenging the norms in a safe environment. Now, we understand that we're in the middle of a pandemic, and so we want you to know that we have taken precautions to make sure that we are safe while we come into your homes. We have the dividers, we have our masks, and we're 6 feet apart. Today's discussion is all about our image, the Black image. And this one's a big one, ladies. So when we think about our image in terms of beauty, what are some of the thoughts that come to you when we talk about Black beauty?
Well, I would say my image was shaped literally for me at a very young age. My grandmother would actually press my nose together just to give it a sharper image, right? It was, again, like the class white. You wanted a sharper nose. And she was thinking that she was giving me a leg up in society. And it's just really interesting how we inherit the ideals of beauty from our family through the ages.
Yeah, that totally connects in terms of grandmother, because growing up in the Caribbean with the very heavy colonial influence, my grandmother, you know, as mixed heritage as she was, always talked about aspiring to be whiter, right? So that was kind of the thing that she tried to implant in us and have us really thinking that way. And so grew up thinking that, you know, blonde, straight hair was better and whiter skin. And then I think that fortunately, because I was in the Caribbean, there were other influences as well. But when I think of something like the media and the magazines that we used to look back then, which were 17 magazines, which portrayed at that time, I haven't looked at a 17 magazine in a long time, so I don't know what it looks like now or if it
It's
even
gone.
exists.
Yeah.
But, you know, they were all white, mostly white people who were portrayed in it. And the only Black magazine I can think of that we got would have been Ebony, and they were older women. You know, they weren't teenagers, so there was never that identity, me looking into a magazine and seeing myself. So yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Beauty was very much shaped by what I saw growing up, because the person that I looked to for beauty was Tootie. Do you remember Tootie from Facts of Life?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so Christina and I would know, it's probably a long time ago, but she had the curled bangs, right? And so then you curl your bangs all the time, and she was what I saw, because she was the only Black person that I saw on TV at that time. And so I was greatly influenced by the things I saw outside.
When it comes to beauty, if we're talking like magazines and stuff, I always think about how I knew how to style my friends' hair and how to do makeup on them before I learned how to do it on myself. Yeah. Even to this day, I cannot do makeup on my own face. Thankfully, we had it done for us today, and I look great. But like if I was to just go in front of the mirror, I do not know how to do makeup on myself. But I know the technique and the theory behind doing makeup on lighter skinned people. But when I think about the first person that I thought is beautiful, it's actually funny because, you know, I watched a lot of Family Channel growing up, and That's So Raven was always on. And, you know, when you're talking about like even looking at things and not a lot of teenagers, she was not the most dark-skinned person, but she also wasn't mixed, right? Which is what you saw a lot that filled the Black quota, especially like in shows that I watched when I was growing up. So it was so nice to just like see her and like wearing these crazy outfits and not really ascribing to any specific like visual interpretation of anything. So I think she would probably be the first person that I thought was beautiful in terms of like Black people. And that was maybe around like 13, 14. I don't remember when the show started, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. I even think about some of the banes of beauty, I guess, so to speak, for Black people. And, you know, straightening your hair, right? Doing those relaxers, the types of products that we put in our hair. I know that there would always be a comment within my family because one of my grandmothers is Indian, and they would say, oh, well, you got the good hair, right? You got the straight hair, and that was a beauty ideal. Did you ever get that as well?
No, I'm I'm Becky with the good hair. That is me. Like, it, you know, when you think about beauty, that was what was glorified when I was growing up, was I had great hair, I had great complexion. And what resonates with what you said is like, who was the first person that I identified or saw myself in and thought was beautiful? I had to think about that. And for me, it was really like Mariah Carey. And I know it's so cliche, but she was the first person that everyone was like, you look just like Mariah Carey. And I didn't, like, we're just two light-skinned people in the big reality of the world. But again, people had to place you. And that was the acceptable version of me. And it's amazing how much that changes how you then just view yourself. And you go, can I sing? You start to question, like, I don't know, like maybe I can hit that note, like, you know, Mariah Carey can. But she was really one early on in my adolescence that really set the foreground for, you know, lighter skinned Black women and holding such a presence. So that, thank you for kind of bringing it there, because I had to really think about that.
In terms of mass media, if we're going to talk about the first person, I said Tootie, but then in the 80s, it was Halle Berry. Remember when Halle Berry, I remember when Arsenio Hall show was on and he made the proclamation that...
Something else to Google.
He made the proclamation that Halle Berry was the most beautiful Black woman in the world, right? And so then everyone was trying to get that hair cut and would try and look like Halle Berry, right? And so it's interesting.
Even for her, what is her hair? I don't know enough about her, but like, is her hair permed or is her hair naturally that straight?
She
Or
is
relaxed,
mixed race
sorry.
as well.
Oh, she's mixed. I didn't know that.
Yes, Halle Berry. Slowing it down. Like, and your story resonates with me too, Renee, because like I think about how to be a woman and a Black woman. I think about my grandma. Like, I think about how she carried herself to this day with such poise, such articulence, and like that is what I strive to be, and that's what she's instilled in me, is like, this is how Black women act and behave and carry themselves. And you know, that was my aspect, like my whole life, just constantly reaffirming me. She was my anchor in helping me identify who am I on that search of, you know, on a spectrum of Blackness. So it's interesting how those moments, and if you don't have that figure that's guiding you in that identity or helping you understand your identity, like you've said many times, like your dad's just allowed you to experience you.
But I will say, I didn't have much of like a female role model. Because my mom passed away when I was like 10. It was like a couple of days before my 11th birthday, so I always mix up. But either way, I was coming into this place where, you know, my body developed much before my brain did. So I had a body of someone who looked much older than my little 10, 11-year-old self. So a lot of it, unfortunately, was being educated by like men and other women surrounding me outside of my family. Like I really envy, as much as that is like very questionable, but it comes from a place of love. And then like you talking about your grandma, I didn't really have that at all, right? So, you know, being developed as I was, like when I was 10, I already had like a B cup, right? So I'm walking down the street and people are yelling at me saying, oh, you look so sweet up, and like all these things. And it's like, for me, a lot of, yeah, Brampton and stuff, like walking around. But it's like, for me, a lot of it was put upon me in a form of sexualization before I was even there, before I was even questioning it for myself, you know? So, you know, beauty in my mind, I can go to like Raven-Symoné, I can go to all these shows that I watch, but beauty in reality for myself was just sexualization. So for a long time, I just stayed far away from it. And even saying that out loud, that's probably why I don't care about makeup for myself. And like, I never wanted to enhance anything else because everything else was already so enhanced and so like visible.
I totally understand that. I mean, I very similarly, you know, matured, as they used to say, young. And my mother kept me in big shirts, you know, because you had to cover up. And it was a challenge. And then the same thing, you know, being told within the family that, well, you know, when you look like you, that's all the guys want, right? And so, okay, so what do I do then? Do I like stay away from, like, what do I do? And
it's like neither of us really get a chance to just be beautiful.
Right.
Because
right. And then nobody told me I was beautiful either. So that was the other part of it until I came to Canada. And then I said, oh, that's just because I'm different from everybody else around, right? But then with my hair as well. I mean, Becky with the good hair, I don't know what my name would have been, but I had the bad hair. And again, coming to Canada was when I started embracing that my curls are okay, that this is who I am, and I don't have to strive to look like somebody else. My grandmother and others, you know, felt I should look like, but yeah, it's so, yeah. Still wear big stuff.
So where does the idea of beauty come from? Like, who tells us what's beautiful?
I think for me, it was definitely with Disney princesses, because the typical Disney princess is white, skinny, long hair.
Can sing.
Right? They all have very similar features. And I believe it wasn't until 2009 that the first black Disney princess came about, which is kind of nuts because the first Disney movie, Snow White, was in 1937.
Wow.
That's wild.
That's
Yeah. And how much of that movie does she spend as a frog? Right?
That's a point, yes.
You know, like not even the whole movie is she the princess that you can see.
And then you even think about that, like growing up in Canada, right? That story was so important and it was so beautiful, and I love that movie. I watched it not way too many times, enough times. But that's still like, isn't it heavily based in like New Orleans? So again, it's
American,
an
yeah.
American experience, which leads to a place of envy, I'd say, at least for myself, of like not being able to fulfill that image. Because I've had such a drastically different experience being here and being in Brooklyn, you know?
Well, I think to answer your question, Jen, like there's a fundamental piece where your perceptions of beauty and your perceptions of yourself are not shaped internally. They're shaped by these outside, like I've heard all of you say, they're shaped by society, they're shaped by media, like again, fundamental element of society. Like it's really, you're shaped by the wisdom of the crowd. And my dad always says, like, there's a certain point where your parents will incubate you, and then you go out into the world. And that's kind of, I think about where I am with our oldest. Like, he's, you know, a teenager. There's a certain element where I shape you and I give you the foundations. I try to instill your sense of culture, a sense of pride, and a sense of purpose. And after that, like, I can only shelter you so long. You're going to see, whether it's BET 106, like you're going to see these outside influences, and you're going to have to make sense of them and leverage kind of those learnings. But it's really those outside influences of what shape you. And it's interesting on how throughout each of our stories, how those outside narratives have either changed or altered us, even for brief moments, on how we've thought about ourselves or how we've reacted outwardly, right? So I really think that's the fundamental piece, and it's really what you do with it, how you think about it.
And marketing, right? And
yeah.
what's out there for us as the consumers. And I just all of a sudden had this thought of, for example, my daughter trying to raise twins, and it's a gender thing a little bit, but going shopping for them and the difference. And I've done this too, trying to buy clothes for them. They're both the same size, but if you take a size 5 boys' clothes and a size 5 girls, they're not the same size.
because you've got twins that are boy-girl twins.
Twins that are boy-girl, right? And they're, you know, they're essentially the same. They should take the same size clothes, but the little girls' clothes are cut in differently. They're cut shorter in the shorts. I mean, so that just to say that for those of us that are consumers, these are things that we might not even, I didn't realize that until I started comparing them, right?
Yeah, you don't realize the outside stimulus. And
Yeah.
then, yeah.
And so what is that saying to our little girls is that, well, maybe you, again, what if you can't fit into that size and you have to wear a bigger size than your brother is wearing, but you're not really bigger, but your perception then starts to change,
And
right?
yeah.
Because
Am
that's
I
a lot of it.
beautiful?
It's our
Yeah.
perception that gets changed, not that our reality has changed.
In all elements, if you don't fit into the norm, whether it's that norm from a clothing perspective at such a youthful age, or societal perception of norm on what we see as far as whether it's Disney movie princesses or whether it's what we read in magazines, do you question, am I beautiful, outwardly beautiful to the populace that matters, which is really that outside society or audience when you are the minority or you are the underrepresented group, right?
In all honesty, when it comes to beauty, and I know the media has shaped my idea of beauty a lot, I have some resentment. I'm not gonna lie, I have some resentment because a few years ago, a celebrity came out with cornrows, and all of a sudden it was beautiful. And I'm like, I've had cornrows since I was 5 years old. Like, why is it now popular and I couldn't wear them to school before because it wasn't you know, a pretty style.
Yeah,
or
it
whatever.
looked uncivilized before, but now
Yeah.
Thinking back to like going through, I don't know if did you ever relax your hair? I know we brought it
Yes.
up. Yeah, okay.
Years
So
ago,
it's
yeah.
like, my hair was relaxed from I was 12, right? And I remember chemical burns just being a normal
your
thing.
life.
It's like, okay, got to put that stuff on my scalp so that it heals properly. I had patches that didn't have hair because I just left it on too long. Because for those who don't know, when you have relaxer, it's this chemical that goes on your head, and you're told when it starts burning, let me know, and I'll rinse it out. So as a kid, I want my hair to be as straight as possible, and I'm sitting there and it's burning, but I'm like, no, I'm fine.
How long can you live
Like
with
another
it?
minute,
Yeah,
another
yeah.
minute. It's fine, it's fine. So then they're rinsing it out, and my hair is coming out with it.
Yeah.
You know, because I couldn't wear cornrows to school because that wasn't proper. That wasn't. And it's just so frustrating, and people don't understand that resentment that builds from when you're a kid, from when you're being put through these beauty rituals because you are not enough to go out in the world and represent yourself, represent your family, represent your culture, whatever it may be.
And yet people pay money to go to a tanning salon, to get darker skin, right? To get curly perms, to get plumper lips. I mean, and what we have isn't okay.
I respect that part of that conversation though, but when it comes to beauty and talking about people modifying their bodies, like there are medicinal reasons why people go to tanning beds
Sure.
too, right? I'm just making sure we get
Yeah.
I'm just making sure because there are people who use it functionally. There are
Right.
people who use it for an aesthetic, and you know, blackfishing has been so huge on Instagram. I don't know if you've heard of it, and stuff like that. So I know that there's that point, but there's also like we have to be mindful of that other part.
You're right.
You know.
You're right. And I have done that myself in the middle of winter. Gone to just
I think
get
like
warm.
really when it all comes down to it, it's like, how is it that if it's on me naturally, it's not okay, and I have to potentially change it? But if you go out and seek and pay for said service, whether it be a perm or lip fillers or whatever the case is, or you know the new glorification of the big booty, like that's okay. But like I, for years, have to think about what I'm gonna wear so that I'm not over accentuating or sexualizing my booty in the workplace. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just like this constant conundrum where it's like, how do we have this double standard? And it's great now that we're living in our own right. As you get older, like I said, you come to accept I am who I am and this is it, and I don't have to hide. But it's all those pieces. Like, am I coming off? You know, you said earlier, like too sexualized. Is this outfit too sexualized because this is my God-given feature and now I have to wear a big shirt or whatever the case is, right? And what does that do as you rear? Like that memory and that experience is imprinted on you. So I think that's the big challenge for me on the stigmas behind black and beauty, is finding that right fit when we're told, it's not okay.
You know, when we think of beauty and when we growing up and getting products, I know, Alicia, we've talked about this at length in terms of finding products that we can actually use, right?
Yeah. So, like, I'll say for myself, I shaved my head at this point, I don't remember when I shaved my head, but for the past year and a bit, I've actually just let my hair grow, and I've been getting into this routine of actually caring for my hair and making sure that it is healthy. And learning about all the products, my goodness, it's terrible. It's terrible. It's like you can't just go to the store. I can't just go somewhere and buy shampoo and conditioner. Like, it just doesn't exist. So you have to like go online. You have to go on these forums. You have to find people who make their own stuff or make your own conditioners and your pre-poos and your leave-ins and your deep and your there's a whole list, you know?
It's such a process.
It is a
and
process.
it's exhausting to really figure out how do I adequately take care of my hair when I can't go into a Walmart and have a plethora of selection. Like growing up in the US, that was the norm. Like I would go into a store and there would be tons of options for me. And I'd be like, yeah, just for me. And there was like light skin, like there was just all these options. And then you come here and you're like, how do I make herbal essences work? Like how?
They have one little shelf in certain
Right.
stores that has the typical on it.
Yeah, so it's
Ethnic
like,
hair care.
yeah, ethnic spelt. Right. Didn't you tell me about an experience
Yes,
like that?
and it was spelled
yeah, sorry.
wrong, which was hilarious.
And it's like, even this section doesn't hear me.
Well, you know, even just trying to go to a makeup artist or a hairstylist, I always have to ask, do you have experience with black skin?
Heck
Or
yes.
do you have experience with black hair?
Can you cut black hair? Can you cut black curly hair? This is a question that should be on the sign beside like did you wash your hands and wear your mask today? Can you actually cut curly hair? Because there's a big difference. And I have had so many experiences where you go, same thing, you're like, can you? And they're like, mm-hmm. And then you leave and it's like 4 inches shorter because it's the hard part. You have
And they
to,
get offended when you ask too, as if it's like it's fundamentally different. You need to have a different set of skills.
like, I'm advocating for a reason. I'm not advocating because I'm questioning your capability. I'm recognizing this is a niche market per se. They don't teach this at, whatever hair school in Toronto, back, again, when we were growing up. I know there's tons of advancements today, but this isn't a norm. So you would have to seek out this enhancement or added capability in your process of cutting black hair. So it's like, I 100% had the same experiences where they're like, absolutely. And you're like,
when you talk about
advocate.
makeup, right? I've heard of makeup artists who are, perhaps doing weddings or whatever, who actually say to the clients, could you bring your own foundation? Because I don't have a foundation that will match. And I mean, trying to find the foundation is a challenge, can be a challenge as well. A lot has changed over the years, absolutely. But, but you're paying someone to do your face, and then they're saying, yeah, but you have to bring your own foundation because I don't carry what you need, right?
I was going to ask you about that, Jen. Have you had a different experience, like maybe where someone was more offended that you even asked that question?
Well, I remember there was a period in my life where I actually did makeup. Like I was a makeup artist. And I remember being taught by a woman who came down, and she said, she was teaching us how to contour and all of those things, right? And so I asked the question, I said, okay, well, will it be different for black skin? And she said, well, it's not something that you really have to worry about because you're not going to have a lot of black people going to prom or getting married. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Like, I went to prom, I got married. Like, are you saying that you don't need to know because they're not going to there's not an influx of black people that you have to work with?
Yeah.
And then with what you're saying in terms of bringing your own foundation, I get offended with that because I'm paying you to do my makeup, or I'm paying you to do my hair, therefore you should have.
100%. You wouldn't go to a mechanic and they'd be like, BYOT. Like, bring your own tire. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're going. Yeah. And while you're at it, bring a lift. Like, you go and you're wanting an experience just like everybody else. So why you have to, I think that's a fundamental piece that you will probably see, through all of our episodes, is that advocation. That advocation for all things. It's not, I can just wake up and have these services and experiences available to me. I had to advocate, and many before me have had to advocate. And that's kind of going back to, a quote you said in the previous episode around that broken back. That's years of people advocating and creating spaces for us to be able to have even an opportunity like what we have on today, right?
And it does something to our psyche as well. We might not realize it, but subconsciously, when you have to continuously have to ask, can you do my makeup? Can you do my hair? And it does something to you, because then it's like I'm not enough type of feeling comes
You're
back.
asking for permission. It's that same slave master type mentality where you're like, am I entitled to ask for, and it's that permission when no one, again, I think it's predominant from a vis-min perspective. So the experience isn't unique to us,
Vis-min?
being black, visible minorities. Oh, so yes, vis-min, visible minorities. That's true, great call out. So I don't think it's unique to us, but it's that same, again, you aren't a whole human to have your own rights and says. You have to ask for some overseeing authoritative body to say yes.
But the one thing I love and admire about black people is that we are so innovative and creative. Not to say that others aren't, right? But because we can't find our own products, people have gone into business for themselves, creating their own stuff, right? And doing well. And so I just admire that we will figure it out.
And I have to say that, over the years of living in London, it's certainly changed a lot, you know, and I think a big part of it are those entrepreneurial Black people who either have lived here and then grown up and recognized what was needed or moved into London. And so there are definitely more places that are open where you can get makeup, you can get hair products, you can get hair care, you can get hair, you know, even. I mean, it used to be that people had to, you know, write to their aunties in America or, you know, go to Toronto or whatever to get it. And now there are more. It might not be perfect, but it's a lot different than it used to be, that's for sure.
Yeah, like I can go down the street, get a block of shea butter, whip it up, and make my own lotion. Like, you know, because I put on lotion from the store and I'm ashy in 2 hours. It's terrible. Like,
Before we wrap up the conversation on our image, I want to get into the shameful details of your past. And I know that, Alicia, you kind of started it out by talking about just like the experience with the relaxer and the patchiness and the clumps of hair and that. And I think of buying a whitening cream back in the day from a Black beauty supply store. And, you know, I bought it with all intention of, you know, I knew I had two-tone skin, and I put it on patches. But when I look back at it, and I look back at the packaging there, I think to myself, oh gosh, like, was I really trying to put on a cream to appear whiter? Do any of you guys have any things that you can think of from the past where you bought a product or something like that that you're not too, I don't know, thrilled that you bought in the past?
Oh, I think I was telling you this morning. When in my early 20s, I had contact lenses. And I didn't need glasses. Okay, let's just start there. I didn't need glasses.
It colored, yeah.
Right, but I wanted to have the blue eyes, the green eyes, right? And so in my early 20s, I'd be rocking the contacts, ruining my eyes because I went to the eye doctor. So this is the shameful part. I went to the eye doctor and I purposely did poorly on the exam so that I could get contact lenses. Colored contact lenses. Yeah, because
Wow.
I wanted that color.
oh no.
Wow.
Yeah, yep.
But you probably did rock the blue eyes. I think
did.
we all went. I did the non-prescription because that was a big fad. I think when I was in high school I was green-eyed, and that was like a whole look in itself. But yeah, you make those concessions. Like we'll go out of our way to fit a certain ideal.
Yeah, because I wanted to fit in, right? Wanted to fit in. So you've heard our views, and now we want to hear yours. So please visit us on our social media platforms and ask your questions. Please make comments, be part of the conversation, and we'll make sure to respond. Until next time.